I had an opportunity to sit down with a gentleman named Darren Hardy years ago. And so I asked Darren this question. I said, Darren, what do you think is the single greatest difference between rich people and everybody else? And what he told me, Candy, changed my life forever.
All right, guys, I am so excited for you to listen in to this conversation. Please welcome to Generation Wealth, my friend, Rory Vaden. Rory, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, buddy. I'm so excited to be here. This is awesome. You guys are crushing it. What a great show and audience. I love it. It makes me so happy to see you doing what you're doing, Candy.
Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual because I know you guys are crushing it because you have such a unique story and also such a unique business. And I think that's why, even though maybe people talk about niche, you are really crushing it with so many of our mutual friends, helping launch books, helping really blow up personal brands. And so I definitely want to get into that. But I would also like for people to just know who you are, because I think, we talk a lot about people's bios and what they've done, but truly anyone listening, and I don't say this lightly and I don't say this often, but what's so special and unique about you and AJ are you and AJ, like who you are as people. And I think in our world, we're so focused on, lists and achievements, and we don't really talk about the person behind it. And so I would just love for you to share a little bit about your story, because I respect both of you so much and just how you show up in the world, and would just like to acknowledge that first off, and just have you tell our audience a little bit about you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, my entrepreneurial journey was started out pretty early because by the time my mother was 22 years old, she had been divorced twice and had two different sons from two different men. And so she was 22 years old. She had me and then my older brother, and no college degree, hadn't finished high school at that point. She went and later finished both. And, we grew up. I was born in a trailer park in Colorado, and we grew up with not much. And my mom got involved with Mary Kay Cosmetics. And so she got involved in direct sales, network marketing. And she would bring me to the meetings, and, they would be talking about goals and time management and success. And so I started to learn about entrepreneurship and money and leadership and sales from the time that I was very, very young, from women. And it also means I know more about makeup than I do about cars, which is true. But, I got exposed to that at an early age. And then I took up martial arts when I was 5 years old. I was very active in that until I was 12. I became the youngest black belt in Colorado to ever get beaten up by a girl. And I learned a lot of discipline through that. And my mom always told me, hey, you're going to go to college. You're going to be the first person in the family to go to college, and you're definitely going to go, and you're definitely going to get a full ride scholarship because there's no way I'll ever be able to pay. And so I believed her, and I studied really hard in school. I was a valedictorian. I got a full ride academic scholarship to the University of Denver. And then when I was at DU, I got recruited for a network marketing company, and I went door to door for 5 summers. So I knocked on doors 14 hours a day, 6 days a week on straight commission, paying all of my own expenses, selling kids' books, educational kids' books door to door. And learned a lot there about sales and recruiting. And then, but I over the course of time in high school and, being involved in student council, and then in that company, I really wanted to be a speaker. And I knew early on that was my dream. And so after graduate school, I heard about a contest called the World Championship of Public Speaking that is put on by Toastmasters. And I was 22, and I thought, man, maybe if I won the World Championship of Public Speaking, maybe that would give me the credibility I need to become a professional speaker. So I studied very, very hard. It's super competitive. There's 25,000 people who compete from 90 countries. And I worked intensely at this for 2 years. And in 2006, I made it to the top 10 in the world, and I lost. But then in 2007, I studied harder. I got more coaching. All in, I did 304 speeches for free. I watched over 1,000 hours of film. I received 2,200 written evaluations. I had dozens of books and coaches, and the next year, I was 23 years old. I made it back to the World Championship for a second time, and that was the year that I lost again, actually, but I lost better than the first time. I was the world champion of public speaking, first runner up. And then then that was when my real entrepreneurial journey started. So we started a company that, so I was like 23. I had this buddy that I had met in college. He was 23, and he had his best friend, Amanda, that he grew up with, AJ. And we, with one other partner, decided we were going to start a company. And we knew a lot about I knew a lot about speaking, a lot about sales. And so we were like, we're going to build the world's greatest sales training company in the world. And we're 20 years old, but all these people are going to pay us to teach them how to sell. And it worked, actually. So we grew that over the next 12 years from 4 of us to about 200 people. That was an 8-figure business. Through that, on that journey, I hit my first book, Take the Stairs, hit the New York Times when I was 29 years old. Then I had a TED Talk a few years later go viral called How to Multiply Time. That's what my second book was based on. Then we sold that company in 2018, and we were out of the sales training space. And then a friend that I had met along the way, Lewis Howes, called me one day and said, "Hey, I really feel like I could use your brain helping me grow my business and my personal brand. Do you have any time?" And it was like, man, we're wide open. We have nothing all of a sudden. And Lewis became our first client. And then he is the reason that Brand Builders Group exists. He was the one that said, this is your new business. You have to teach people how to build and monetize their personal brand, how to become more well-known. And so we've done that. We've helped 13 clients hit the New York Times or Wall Street Journal or USA Today bestseller list. We've helped 4 clients go viral with their TED Talks with over 1 million views. We've had 6 clients grow more than $1 million a year in annual revenues, all by helping mission-driven messengers, so basically experts, coaches, speakers, authors, consultants, and entrepreneurs, experts and entrepreneurs, build their personal brand. And that's it. So that's the whole life story, as fast as I can give you the whole thing.
That was a lot in a really short period of time. And by the way, we shared the whole growing up in a trailer and young entrepreneurial experience when we were really young, which I always love that because we share that. But yeah. What I think is so important to touch on, there's so many things, but I really like to dial back to 4 to 200 employees in your first company.
Yeah.
And working with you, knowing you, what I love many things about your brain, but what I think is so unique about the way you work is the systemization and the processes that you build and how fast you've done it in this company, right? Because you've only been 3-4 years in this first.
Brand Builders is we just finished our 19, 20, 20. We just finished our 4th full year. And we're on track to hit 8 figures again. So and by the way, I left this part out of the story. So AJ and I started that company together. A year into it, we started dating. Then we got married. Then we had kids. Then we sold the company. And in Brand Builders Group, we don't have any partners and any investors. It's just the 2 of us. So all in, I think we've had 5 multi-7-figure businesses, and Brand Builders will be our second 8-figure company.
Yeah. And I think, like, obviously you have the fancy degree and you've got the sales experience and all of that. But I think what makes a really good company great, and it can really grow that fast, not just obviously your leadership, but those systems and processes you have done in such a short period of time. You have made your company feel like it's been around for 15 to 20 years. Can you talk a little bit about, do you think that that's something that has made you successful and grow so fast? And if so, how do you look at business and being an entrepreneur in that way? Because you have such a clear path for your customer journey. That's like, you do this, then you do this, then you do this. So it's as opposed to them just like hitting you once and being done, it's like you basically paint this picture of why they need to work with you for 2, 4, or eternity, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how business owners or entrepreneurs listening can apply that to their business and how you view that in order to build it out?
Yeah, I'd love to. So this actually ties in really closely with my TED Talk in my second book. And this is a little bit of a sidebar story, but it's worth the wait. So I had an opportunity to sit down with a gentleman named Darren Hardy years ago. He's been a friend and a mentor for a long time. He used to be the publisher of Success Magazine, and he's got really well known in this space. And I was sitting with Darren in this Starbucks in an area of Southern California called Cardiff by the Sea, and it was really ritzy, like Orange County. And so we're sitting at this Starbucks just catching up. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a Bentley in the drive-thru of Starbucks. And Bentleys are my favorite car. And so I was like, oh man, that's beautiful. I love that Bentley. And then sure enough, behind it is like Aston Martin. And then I look over in the other side and there's like Rolls Royce, Ferrari, Lamborghini. And it dawns on me that I'm in a very different part of the world than the trailer park that I grew up in. And so I asked Darren this question. I said, Darren, what do you think is the single greatest difference between rich people, financially rich people, and everybody else? And what he told me, Candy, changed my life forever. And it ties into this. And so here's what he said. He said, well, basically, Rory, he said, if I could hear the way that these people going into Starbucks were thinking as they made this decision, then I could tell you based on their thought process, which ones are already rich or virtually guaranteed to become rich just by their thinking. And he said, there's only 3 types of people in the world really as it relates to money. He said, the first person walks into Starbucks and they ask themselves, 2 questions. The first question is, do I want this $5 coffee? And, if the answer is yes, for this first type of person, which represents sort of lower middle class thinking, their second question is, what do I have to do to get the coffee? And they're completely governed by short-term emotional impulses. They'll beg for the coffee, they'll steal it, they'll put it on a credit card when they know they can't afford it, they'll borrow money from a friend. Like all they care about is what feels good in the short term. But he said that's not most people. He said most people walk into Starbucks and they ask themselves, do I want this $5 coffee? And if the answer is yes, their second question is, do I have $5? And I remember telling him, I said, what's wrong with that question? And he said, well, nothing. There's nothing wrong with that question. It's a perfectly legitimate question. It's just not how rich people think. He said, a wealthy person knows that if you were to spend $5 on that coffee, then that's $5 you're not spending on something else. And I said, you're talking about the concept of opportunity cost. He says, yes, but there's more to it than that. Because he says, a wealthy person knows if they were to invest that $5, that the $5 over time would grow to be worth more than $5. Using rough math, $5 invested for 30 years at 8%, he's doing like rule of 72, quick calculation, would grow to be worth about $50. So a wealthy person's second question is not, what do I have to do to get this coffee? And it is also not, do I have $5? A wealthy person's second question is this $5 coffee worth $50 to me 30 years from now? What? I mean, that was crazy, right? So that blew my mind. I had never had anyone teach me that. What he was illustrating there is something that we now call the significance calculation. And we talk about it with multiplying time. People have heard Dr. Covey talk about importance and urgency, but there's a new calculation which we call the significance calculation. And here's the difference. Importance is how much does something matter. Urgency is how soon does something matter. But significance is different. Significance is how long is this going to matter. Here's how all this connects. You might say, Rory, Candy just asked you a question about systems, and you're talking about compounding interest, which we all understand because that's a big part of money. What does that have to do with systems? And that's a good question because I didn't see the connection either until years later when I'm literally, late at night typing out the manuscript for Procrastinate on Purpose, and like God types this through me. I had never had the thought before. here's what I realized. Automation is to your time exactly what compounding interest is to your money. Mm. Automation is to your time what compounding interest is to your money. Just like compounding interest takes money and it turns it into more money, automation or processes or systems takes time and it turns it into more time. But the conundrum is that all of us as entrepreneurs go, I'm too busy to create a process. I'm too busy to train someone else. I don't have enough time to teach. It's faster for me to do this myself. And what they failed to realize is that anything you create a process for today saves you time tomorrow, because tomorrow the process or the technology, it doesn't all have to be like software, but systems is the word you use, which is the right word, right? Those systems, tomorrow the process is taking care of the task that you would otherwise be doing. And that is, by the way, how you multiply time in one sentence. So the whole premise of my whole second book and the whole TED Talk in one sentence is this: the way you multiply time is by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that create more time tomorrow. In your personal life, it's setting up online things like online bill pay and going, if I told you, I said, hey, you should take 2 hours today to set up online bill pay. Many people would be like, Rory, what a waste of time. Like, I have so many more important things I could do than set up online bill pay. But a multiplier would look at that calculation differently. A multiplier knows that if I spend 2 hours today setting up online bill pay, then that saves me 30 minutes every month from paying my bills. After 4 months' time, I would have broken even, 30, 120 minutes or 2 hours. Well, every month thereafter, I am multiplying time. I have time being created that I would not otherwise have because I would be doing it myself. The way that rich people think about money is exactly the same way that multipliers think about time. The reason that we have now built whatever the number is, six multi-million-dollar different businesses, is because we have the discipline to set up processes and systems and train people, and it's a fight, right? You have to constantly be fighting against what Charles Hummel called in his 1969 essay, the tyranny of the urgent. Mm-hmm. And it's easier in the short term to go, I'll just do this myself. Yep. But the discipline, the mindset it takes to scale is the same for an entrepreneur, is the same way that a wealthy person invests their money. So if you can understand compounding interest with money, and then you learn how to multiply time, it's the same thing, but that applies directly to entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much value there. If anyone wants to pause and go back and re-listen to that, because it explains what I love too, is that you didn't just answer the question, you explained the why behind it. Can you tell a few, what are some of the common things that maybe you look at when creating a system or a process? Is this something that you did right out of the gate? Did you start it? Because what I've found with working with entrepreneurs is they do this too late. They're in it. They're working in the business. They're not working on it and optimizing it. Is there a process that you go through in the very beginning that you're like, okay, these are the very first things we have to have in place?
So actually, there's been so much of that talk over the years of work on your business instead of in your business. I actually think you have to work in your business first. I think you can't lead where you won't go, and you can't teach what you don't know. And every business, like Brambles is a great example. So, hopefully this will become our second 8-figure enterprise that we've started from scratch, like customer finance. We're not taking on loans and investors, and we're building it out of sales and revenue. And that you do it yourself, but then as quickly as possible, you need to replace yourself. And here's another mistake I think that entrepreneurs make is they go, ooh, I'm going to hire a number two. Like, I'm going to hire this magical unicorn, this number two, and that person is going to run my business, and they're going to do all the marketing and all the sales and all the, and it's like, and those people exist, by the way, that can do marketing and sales and finance and customer experience and administration and HR. If you can do all of those things, you're called an entrepreneur, which means It's going to be very hard to make that find a number two. But what you're a person is not going to be your savior. like in your business. Now, in your spiritual life, you know me, I'm a hardcore Bible thumping Jesus freak. So, but in your business, a person isn't going to save you, but a process will, because processes outlast people, right? If I have a process, and a process is also something I can do immediately. As soon as I have done enough trial runs to where I have succeeded myself, then I go, great. All I need to do is document exactly what I did. Then I can go find a person to do it. If I have to find a person that knows how to do it, especially not only knows how to do it, they know how to do it the way I want it to be done, and I don't have it codified exactly what that is, that's where we fail. And we're like constantly on this hiring treadmill of like, we hire people and they turn over and da-da-da. But if I invest in the process and I go, man, I have it documented. And so inside a brand builders group, the other thing is I never want to answer the same question twice, ever, for any reason. And so we record everything. So I want a written process, and then I want a video. And I want to teach on the video, here's exactly what to do. And I want to have screen share so that if it's something that you have to do with like a CRM or something, it's like, here's the screen share of how to do it. And it's documented. And now I have something that can scale. What's ironic is I'm going much slower than the entrepreneur who's just hair on fire, go, 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 doing it all themselves. In the beginning, I'm going slower. But it's the metaphor that I like to use is going, if you were going to try to if you were going to try to go from San Francisco to New York, what most entrepreneurs do is they're like, let's go to New York, like New York or bust. And they start sprinting and they just like take off running, like, here we go. And there's a real powerful beauty to that. And I think, there's a lot to be said for action, and messy action is good. Sure. But what processes are is going like, okay, you take off running. Meanwhile, I'm going to build a tricycle, or a bicycle, or a car, or a Ferrari, or a jet. And you're going to be further ahead of me. And this is where I think comparison really kills us, is we see people online like, oh, they're so far ahead of me. They're so far ahead of me. And we're comparing where they're at. What we really want to look at is what's the long-term trajectory of going, okay, you're ahead of me for now, but I'm building a jet. And it's not going to take me long to catch you, like once you're out there on foot. And I don't think you should be comparing yourself to people anyways, but you have to have that significance perspective, that longer term perspective. If not, you build a lifelong prison sentence for yourself to do everything on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it's like what I always say, you built yourself a job and not a business. Right?
Yeah.
I love that. People are not your savior. A process can be when it comes to business. I love that. Now, I want to make sure, because I want to pivot to what you're doing now in your business. And because I think it can help a lot of people, and it's interesting. I know you're obviously a Hall of Fame speaker, right? You've done tons and tons, thousands of stages. And I know so many people think, oh, it'd be great to write a book. It'd be great to speak. But I think what they discount often is it's actually hard to monetize those things, right? It's harder than most people think to build a business or build a personal brand that you can monetize. Can you tell us a little bit about what you teach people in this world of building personal brands, maybe even just how that is different from a business brand, and how people can maybe hedge the odds in their favor to monetize something like that and actually make a business from it and not just create another job?
Totally. So I think it's important to understand what we mean when we say personal brand, because I think a lot of the breakdown for people is that they misunderstand what personal brand is. Like they hear, and we work with some of the biggest personal brands in the world, right? Like our clients are Lewis Howes, Ed Mylett, Amy Porterfield, Peter Diamandis, Jasmine Star. Like, we have Eric Thomas, E.T., the hip hop preacher. I mean, like we have, but most of our clients are not that, right? We have about 1,000 clients, and 5% of them are really, really household names. The rest of them are like your everyday expert or entrepreneur. But when people hear personal brand, they tend to think the wrong things. They tend to think, oh, that's social media, or, oh, that's a website, or, oh, that means you have to have a podcast, or that means it's a book, or you're a speaker, or you're an influencer. Personal branding is much bigger than all of that. The way that we define personal branding is that personal branding is simply the digitization of reputation. It's the digitization of your reputation. So it's not about, oh, I'm going to be an influencer, I'm going to have brand deals, I'm going to sell books, da, 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 da. It's about going, who are you in real life? What expertise do you have? What problem do you solve? What value can you provide to the world? And then digitizing that and spreading it at scale, which is one of the reasons we started to pay attention to it is digitization scales, right? And so that's why we learn and spend a lot of time studying those things. So if you go, okay, some people go, should I build a personal brand? Well, that's kind of a silly question. You already have a personal brand. Like, you already have a reputation. So the question is just, how big is it? And how much reach do you have, and what is your impact? Now, when you look at monetizing it, to your question specifically, there's a big difference between a pile of followers and a pile of cash. It's surprisingly difficult to turn even millions of followers, like as an example, even millions of followers, it's difficult to get a couple thousand book sales out of millions of followers. Like, it's a very difficult thing to do. But there are 5 mechanisms that we have identified to do that. There are really only 5 business models to monetize a personal brand, and we call them the PAIDs. There's 5 ways to get paid from your personal brand. So PAIDS. So the first is you create a product. The P is a product. So you have a pile of followers and you sell them a product. This is Sarah Blakely, right? She sells Spanx. This is Elon Musk. He sells Tesla, right? Like, it is, even those people, if you're Steve Jobs, you sell an iPhone, you sold people laptops. They still have personal brands, even though they're not influencers. It's still reputation. It's still about trust. It's still about solving a problem in the world. But what entrepreneurs can do is they use a personal brand not to sell a video course, although you can do that. We'll talk about that in a second. They use their personal brand to drive fuel and attention and awareness to their business. The fastest path to cash is to monetize the thing you're already doing, right? So that is the P is products. Now the A is ads and affiliates. This is Lewis's model. Lewis's business model is not so much to sell his audience anything. His business model is to build a large audience and then sell other people access to his audience. And in his case, when we first started working together, he had like 30 million downloads of his podcast. And then a couple years later, it's grown to over 500 million total downloads. That's, for a lot of reasons, mostly a matter of Lewis's focus on it and not focusing on other things, but focusing on that. And so, that resulted in now he's got a deal with Sirius, and now Sirius sells the show, and he really just focuses on creating the content. But if you're good at throwing a party and you're good at building an audience, then the A, ads and affiliate model, can be a good one. The I is information products. Information products. So that's courses, membership sites, certifications, assessments, anything that is an information, ebooks, information-based products. Of course, there's been an explosion of those. And we have a lot of clients that do really well at that. And you can do that, but it doesn't mean you have to do that. It doesn't, people equate too often a personal brand with that. The D in PAIDs is deals. And those are third-party deals where someone pays you for basically a royalty arrangement. Licensing deals, brand deals, TV deals, book deals, music deals. They're typically later in somebody's career. But then the S is services. Services. And services are the fastest way to monetize a personal brand, is you sell your time for money. And people, sometimes that has a bad rap around entrepreneurs, like, oh, it's just you're trading time for money. Well, there's some really high-paying ways to trade time for money. Speaking is one of them, right? Like, several of the people that I have mentioned get more than $50,000 to stand on a stage and speak for an hour. Like, that's technically time for money, but it's like pretty good money. Speaking is a great job, but it's not a great business because it doesn't work at all without you, and it's not super scalable. But if you need to make money quickly, services is the fastest way to do that, right? So it's a coaching, consulting, speaking, training, Or, you build a personal brand and then you're like, sharing food and you're a private chef, or you talk about home organization and you're a home organizer, or you're a chiropractor, a financial advisor. Like we have a lot of service-based clients, like professional services people that are clients, and that falls right in there. But while services is the shortest, most immediate path to cash, it is the least scalable long-term. And so we analyze the paids against something we call the D.A.R.E.S. And so the D.A.R.E.S are 5 characteristics of the perfect business model. So we look for as many of these, and this is another acronym, and it stands for the perfect business model is things that are digital, automated, recurring, evergreen, and scalable. Digital, automated, recurring, evergreen, and scalable.
What are a couple examples of those?
So, we've not found a single example of a business model that is all of them. Okay. Netflix is the closest because it's digital, right? It's a digital product. So you don't have physical inventory, warehousing, logistics, tariffs, all that stuff, manufacturing. Automated, meaning it's self-serve. The customer serves themselves. You don't have to have, people out there, sales teams, all that sort of stuff. Sure. Recurring, so meaning you pay for it every month. Mm-hmm. And then evergreen means it never needs to be updated. Netflix is pretty close to that because a lot of what you're buying is a backlog of content, but people would unsubscribe if Netflix wasn't adding new content. So that's the part where it's a little bit weaker. And then scalable means that you can add revenue without adding expense, right? So this is the difference between growth and scale, right? So growth is you grow your revenues, but your expenses grow with them. For us, when we think of scale is you grow revenues, but expenses don't grow proportionately. So that is, what is the infrastructure setup, and how much more revenue can you bring on without having to add more staff, etc. So it's not that one is better than the other, and they typically offset. Like recurring and evergreen work against each other because people are typically not going to pay a recurring fee for something that never changes, which is what evergreen is. So it's not about what's the perfect business model. It's about what's the right business model for you based on who's the audience you serve, what are you passionate about, what do you have deep expertise in, and most of that we orient around the audience member. That the real magic here is figuring out who you want to serve, and there's a couple of shortcuts for figuring out who you should serve, which we could talk about if you want. But that's the PAIDs and the D.A.R.E.S.
That's so good. And I also love how, just to touch on the who, because there are so many people that are just like, oh yeah, just go out and, become a business coach, even though you've never had any business experience, or just become, whatever this next thing is, even though you have no experience or expertise in the area. And what I love, I'll let you say this, is when you talk about the who, you have a different way of sharing it. And you're not like, just go be somebody that you're not in order to monetize and make money. How do you talk about who people should be serving?
Yeah. Thank you, Candy. It's, the full Brand Builders Group experience is 14 different 2-day experiences. You mentioned that earlier and we cover things on the art of speaking, the business of speaking, podcasts, book launches, funnels, paid traffic acquisition, selling high dollar offer, all this stuff. But the first one is called Finding Your Brand DNA. It's a 2-day experience, and it helps people find their uniqueness, because the best piece of personal branding advice I've ever received was from a gentleman named Larry Winget. And he said, the goal is to find your uniqueness and exploit it in the service of others. Find your uniqueness and exploit it in the service of others. And that's one of the most brilliant pieces of advice I've ever heard, and specifically around personal branding. But what Larry wasn't in the business of was teaching people how to find their uniqueness. So we created a process for it, right? We take people through this. It's a whole bunch of exercises. It's 2 days. And what we know now that we didn't know when we started the company 4 years ago was we figured out a shortcut. And when we started scaling and we started training our strategists how to do this, that was when we noticed, there's a theme here. And so it's worth going through the whole experience, but here's the shortcut if you're trying to do it yourself. What we realized is that for all of us, you are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. You're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. The reason you shouldn't be a business coach if you've never launched a business is because you can't speak in a deep way about starting a business or growing a successful business. And so even if you think in your mind, oh, that's a good idea or good model, it's not the right way to succeed. And you don't have to do that. What we know and what we believe is that every problem you've experienced in your life is prepared you into becoming the person that you needed to be so that you could look back and now help someone else. And all of us have overcome something. None of us have gone through life easily. There's always heartbreak. And so what you have to ask yourself is, and part of what we ask you when we work with people is we say, what challenge have you conquered? What obstacle have you overcome? What setback have you survived? What tragedy have you triumphed over? Whatever the answer is to that question is the fully legitimate, completely aligned, 100% authentic, uncopyable uniqueness magic that can make you not only make money, but make you change the world. And so you have to ask, what problem have I solved and who has that problem? And we think that you should start with who. The sooner you get clear on the who, the sooner that the why will show up and the what you should do, all of those things will fall into place. And the shortcut is basically to ask, who was I? And that's the biggest hint.
Well, and I think what's so beautiful and brilliant about that too is it gets you to the heart of what you're doing, as opposed to just building something because somebody else is doing it and monetizing it, right? Like I see that so much since I've kind of come on the scene, if you will, and I'm using quotes for anyone listening to this just audio wise.
Totally.
I've been doing it for 20 plus years, right? 25 to be exact now. I come on the scene to teach it. And now I see other people kind of regurgitating a lot of the types of content that I do. And it doesn't land the same way because they don't have the experience. Like they didn't get the big tax bills that made them understand, oh my gosh, I need to learn taxes and like nerd out on all of this tax stuff because I don't want to get a 6-figure tax bill again. And so I think that it's important to be who you are. And what I've noticed, just to share for anyone, like the more I show up, more authentic is me, and not caring about trolls or who's not going to like it, or if it's going to land this one, the better it's been. And the more people, it's even if it's polarizing, some people aren't going to like you, but there's going to be other people that resonate with your story and who you are, even more so than if you try to be vanilla and play to everybody. So just from my own experience, I've noticed that.
You're a great example of that. I mean, you're a great example of that. And you're having a meteoric rise to success comparable to most people in the space. And it looks like, oh, she's so lucky, or she's this overnight to think. It's not that at all, right? It's you're operating in your uniqueness. You're helping people to do those things. And that is the magic, right? That nobody else can copy. But it's amazing how much work it takes to find that and to get clear on that. And what most of us do is we try to emulate other people, and we try to do all the things that other people are doing. And we have too many ideas and too many messages and too many audiences and too many products, too many revenue streams. And, this goes all the way back to my very first book, 2012, Take the Stairs. If you have diluted focus, you get diluted results. Period. But when you center on that uniqueness and you lean into who you're becoming, and I believe that this is the divine design of your humanity, that God's created you for this purpose. I believe this is the answer to why do we experience problems and pain, is because it is preparing us to help somebody else someday and to be able to walk other people through that. And that's a beautiful way to think about it that goes far beyond making money. And when I say we serve mission-driven messengers, that's exactly who our audience is. They care about money. We like money. We're good at making money. Money is important. You need money to hire people and get stuff done. But money should be subservient to the mission. Revenue should be subservient to reputation. Income should be subservient to impact, right? Like that is, at least that's who we work with, is going, I want to dedicate my life to solving a problem. Mother Teresa dedicated her life to ridding the world of poverty, right? Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his life to rid the world of inequality. What is the problem that you would dedicate your life to solving? And what audience can you serve in the deepest way? When we find the answer to that question, you're going to break through the wall with or without us.
Yeah. And you know what's so powerful about that too is the more you lean in, which for me, this was a hard shift too, because I saw what was working for other people. And like most people do, I'm like, I think maybe I need to downplay who I am. I need to maybe position this a little differently. And the more I let that go and the more I stepped into just, this is who I was created to be, this is how it is, and just share it, the more I realized that there are people that respond to that. So if you've been told in your lifetime, you're too much of this, or, people don't like the way that you show up here, I promise you that the more I stepped into that, the more everything exploded. And people they do say what you're saying, like, oh my gosh, this rise to ascension that you've had. And I'm like, dude, I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm just talking about it for the first time. But I was willing to do the things that a lot of people won't, which is to be okay with trolls, to be okay to speak into who I am. And it's amazing the audience that you can create and how people just appreciate the honesty and the transparency of you showing up real. So I just want to acknowledge that that's how you teach everybody to do that. And I love that. You're not teaching people to be an influencer and influence in something that they don't have any experience in. And I think that that's something that is personal branding is getting a bad maybe persona in that regard, because there's a lot of people speaking and they don't have the experience in it. And I think people see through that. Before I let you go, obviously the name of the show is Generation Wealth. So one of the things I want to talk about, we talked about income and impact and money and so many things. You've obviously had experience building 7 and 8 figure companies. And I would just love to hear at this stage in your life and where you are in business, what does wealth truly mean to you?
Yeah. Here's another quote that I wish was a Rory Vaden quote, but it's not. This is a quote from a gentleman named Alan Weiss. And he says, wealth is discretionary time. And I think that's a pretty good definition. And that's always stuck with me for years. Wealth is discretionary time. And so, and I think there's a difference between what does success mean and what is success to you, what is wealth to you. But, I think that impact and influence is the new income. I think that people are waking up to the reality of spending their entire life chasing money, being consumed about money, being worried about money, trying to make money. And again, I think money is good. I think money is great. I think money solves a lot of problems in the world. But I think people are waking up to the idea to go, there's never enough of it. When money is the thing that you're chasing, there's never enough of it. And what I think people are really looking for is peace. And peace comes from knowing that your life counted for something. And what makes you know that your life counted for something is when you helped someone else. Like, our highest self is to be our highest value to others. When we are helping other people, we find meaning and context for our lives. And I think we're experiencing, like in our life right now, we're experiencing extraordinary wealth. I wouldn't necessarily say monetarily, like a lot of the money we've invested back into the business to make it grow, right? Like, it's not like we're rolling in the dough. I mean, it's all relative, right? But we're experiencing a really deep sense of wealth, because even now, more than our previous, we're helping people live into their purpose, and we feel like we're adding value from what we've learned. And it's because we're helping people to go through the process that we have been through ourselves. And so I don't, people sometimes say, like, how do I find my purpose? What's my purpose? And I think that's the wrong question to ask. I think you just ask, who can I serve? How can I help? And I think if you do that, then you'll find health and wealth and happiness, and you'll make a truckload of money along the way, and more than enough.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much wisdom and brilliance in that. Thank you for sharing. Actually got a little emotional just talking about peace, because I think so often people are trying to focus on money and they're just really missing the mark of what it takes to build a rich life, and money's great. We obviously love that. But when that's the only thing you're after, you can really miss what we're here for. So thank you for sharing that. Can you let people know, how can they find out more about what you do? I mean, there's very few people that I bring on the show that then I recommend my audience to work with. And you're one of the few that I can speak to say, guys, if you want to build a personal brand, if you even want just more information about what this is, I recommend Rory and AJ and the whole team at Brand Builders are some of the best people that you can ever work with. So tell people how they can find out more and maybe jump on a free call or something with you guys.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we do real life coaching, human to human. Like that's our thing, is we're really like one-on-one training and one-on-one coaching. If you go to freebrandcall.com/candy, so freebrandcall.com/candy, you can just request a call with us. The very first call we do with everyone is free. And you can check that out. And I would say that's the way to go. We want to meet you. We want to hear your story. We believe that your uniqueness lives at the intersection of everything you've ever been and everything you feel called to be in the future. And so that's what we're going to ask you about. We want to hear your past and who you've been, and also where do you feel called? And we think there's the magic is right there in the middle of those two. And so we'd love to talk to you. And Candy, I believe in you so much. It's been such a pleasure and honor to get to work with you and be your friend. And I just love what you're doing, buddy. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on, guys. We'll link everything below in the show notes so you can see. And just want to thank you, Rory, for who you are and how you show up and how you serve the world. It's a pleasure to be your friend and to work with you as well.
Thank you, buddy.